Hello, everyone. My name is Sachin Sharma. This is the Jyotish project, and we're doing How to Study Jyotish series. This is lecture 9, Why Your Own Birth Chart is Not a Playground. So let's get right into it. This is going to be a fun one. So, the objective of this lecture is to understand why self study through your own birth chart is fraught with projections, bias, and spiritual bypassing, and how to approach it constructively. So, this lecture explores the pitfalls of personal identification, the necessity of detachment, and practical strategies to transform your chart into a tool for true insight and growth, objective and true and honest self reflection. The chart almost starts becoming like a real map to navigate and not just a map that one is sort of hallucinating in some sense. So, these are the sections that we're going to be covering in this: the temptation of self study, the problem of projection and bias, spiritual bypassing, the importance of detachment and witnessing, when and how studying your own chart can be valuable, practical strategies for healthy self study, when and how to bring your own chart into deeper work. So let's start. So the temptation of self-study and guilty as charged. I have been such a advocate for self-studying. This primarily happened because at certain point in my life we couldn't sort of manage to get guitar lessons for me, and I wanted to learn the guitar. I was 15 years old or something, and I learned how to play. I teach myself through YouTube, and my progress was slow, but I managed to teach myself to the point that by the time I graduated from college, I could give guitar lessons to sort of have extra income. So I started teaching guitar. I played a little bit in small places and stuff like that. So that sort of gave me this confidence that being self-taught is not that bad. It's possible for me, and it gave me this freedom and this non-reliance on any teachers, and it was free. So I was safe. I didn't have the money to afford lessons at that point, but lessons weren't that expensive. It's more about prioritizing. I wasn't prioritizing it and things like that. So this is how my sort of thing really got anchored in self study and this thing with teachers and stuff like that. Until so at some point I sort of, especially with Jyotish studies, I also wasted then 3 or 4 years through self studying. So that idea got anchored into this, that I can just self teach myself astrology, especially Jyotish, and then it's going to be fine. Like, just there's so much content on YouTube, and just how I watched so many guitar lessons, I could do this. And it wasn't the whatever I studied in the first 3 to 4 years, I had to unlearn. And it took me another 3 years to unlearn that, clarify myself, ground myself philosophically, and then another 3, 4 years to sort of ground myself. So I've been studying for like 12 years now. I started my obsessive journey with Jyotish in January 2014, and it's what, 2025 now. So it's been a long uh, thing with all kinds of mistakes and everything. So this lecture comes from this place, from uh, understanding the pitfalls by not avoiding the pitfalls, by actually falling in the pits, and then realizing why this is sort of not the right strategy. So, when beginning your study of Jyotish, it's natural to want to dive into your own chart first. And one should, why not, right? After all, it's personal, familiar, and immediately relevant. You feel the pull to test theories and techniques on yourself, to make sense of your life, your struggles, your patterns. That's what we fundamentally want from Jyotish: to illuminate ourselves, know ourselves better. We meditate for realization of our self, for awareness, to cultivating deeper attentiveness, attention, self-regulation, mindfulness, strengthen our system. Similarly, we contemplate ideas and stuff, all for like personal development, so that we can become better sort of agents in society, and in universe as a society, even at on some massive spiritual scale, I guess. But when it comes down to Jyotish, it's also, that's what we want to do. That's what ultimately we want to learn the ropes and do everything so that we get that awareness. So this temptation comes from sincere curiosity, but also from a deep psychological drive. What is it? The hope that self analysis will lead to quick insight, control, and relief. Sometimes it might, sometimes it doesn't. Your chart feels like a mirror, but it's a mirror that reflects your own desires, fears, and blind spots just as much as it reveals the truth. The pull to analyze your chart is powerful. Why? Because it seems practical. What better way to learn than by examining your own life? Which is true. It offers immediacy, so no waiting, no second-hand interpretation, just directly experiencing. It promises personal transformation, the ultimate goal of studying Jyotish to become a better human being in some sense. But this path is fraught with pitfalls. In the next section, we'll explore how this well meaning impulse often leads to projection bias, clouding your vision more than clarifying it. So, we want to start with our chart, but uh, there's a way to do it. And the problem is, when we start, we'll always get really deluded and make up stuff. Oh, this is because of this. And even because we're not philosophically grounded and there is no guiding light that has more experience than us making it okay. So, the problem of projection and bias. So, when we study our own chart, our interpretation is inevitably colored by who we are, our desire, fear, hopes, and blind spots. That is the problem of projection. So, projection means we see what we want or fear to see rather than what is truly present in the chart. And part of it would be coded within the chart. How much we project, how objectively can we analyze the chart. And sometimes, if you have like certain conditions with certain grahas, I don't want to like say it out what kinds of placements and stuff, because then technique scavenging starts and we start noting down these things. And but there's so many nuances and complexities, so this has to be studied more carefully. So we read our chart through the lens of but anyway, so what I was saying was that uh, we start sort of we we want to projection means we see what we want or fear to see rather than what is truly present, right? So we're not able to objectively access it. We're not able to ground ourselves in what's actually there. So we'll think things that are true or not, and it's coded in the chart. That's what I was that was a train of thought. And depending on certain placements and stuff, so we some people have the capacity to access it right at the beginning. Some people don't, and a lot of the times there are certain placements that freak us out, certain placements that we're really glad to have, and we're gladdened in different both are sort of distorting our groundedness in what we need to do. So we read our chart through the lens of personal narrative, which distorts its meaning. So it becomes like a tarot like sort of thing. We are projecting our own biases, beliefs, and stuff like that, and a lot of this is true for all psychoanalytic psychological things. So you see, when you ask your psychotherapist, what do you mean by psyche? What are you therapizing in the first place within me? Do you think I am a brain? Mind is brain, or mind is beyond the brain? Do you believe a nervous system is part of the entire system? Do you take a psychosomatic approach? What is your philosophy of the mind? Right? Otherwise, they'll project. They'll whatever their definitions are, they'll be using that naturally. Naturally we project. That's how manas is. That's the point of the moon, and the whole system is like that. So but we want to know this because this is happening unconsciously anyway. So what are their beliefs? What sometimes even their political beliefs. So you come up with something and you're like, oh, I want to be devoted to this particular deity, or I want to do this kind of thing. And your analyst has your therapist, psychotherapist has a atheistic bias, which is unconscious, and they'll start projecting that in the session. So the same Jyotish is exactly that. It's your unconscious. And a lot of the books we choose to read, the way we philosophize, the way we believe stuff, it's all coming out of this personal equation, is what Carl Gustav Jung used to call. So common manifestations include over identifying with positive traits and dismissing challenges. Sometimes we need to dismiss challenge so that we can stay emotionally regulated, right? So we need to focus on the positive aspects of the birth chart, but that's still not objective. So a lot of it is how strong the ego complex is, how strong our sense of self is, that under the weight of some kind of self awareness, do we collapse? because if I realize that I am actually not that good a person, I've been mean. I have mean streak, and I can get agitated, and the issues in the chart which are showing, confirming that, doubly confirming that, and I know this to be true. The chart makes it more self aware, and if I can't handle that, I'll be like, it's actually the world. I'll justify. I'm like, it's actually their fault. I'm good. I don't need to work on myself. And maybe it won't be their fault, maybe it would be, but it has to be navigated carefully. So blaming planetary placements, Mercury retrograde, that's why I'm like this, or that is for personal difficulties without nuance. So nuance is lost, not understanding that Mercury is part of your own cognitive capacities. So if you regulate and cultivate your own Mercury, it's not that Mercury is retrograde outside, it's part of your psychostructure, your psyche, rationalizing or denying uncomfortable insights because maybe they are not being voiced in the right way, framed, conceptualized in the right way within the psyche. So assuming the chart is the self rather than a map of tendencies and potentials, spiritual bypassing, using positive interpretations to avoid the real inner work. And the list can be so long. These are some of the things that I could think of, but it could be such a long list. In fact, like whatever you feel, think of newer things, just comment below and share with, so that everyone can like share your insights about this also. So this bias can blind you to the depth that Jyotish offers. Instead of gaining clarity, one starts reinforcing existing psychological patterns, often unconsciously. So you start like instead of even seeing a pattern, one pattern, a bias, a fear based pattern, let's say, even starts distorting something that has some kind of potential and positivity. The person might be really good and gentle and kind and very friendly and a great person, but they might have another thing which makes them not have a good self concept. So people, when they're gentle to people, they're good to people, and people would always say to them that you're such a nice friend, and but they internally might believe that they're not a good person, they're not a good human being, they should be hurt, they should be blamed, they should be tortured in different psychological, emotional ways. Right. So one part of the chart that is needs some work, one part of the psyche that is creating distortions can color the entire chart. But when we are playing ourselves out with people, the people would sort of give us feedback. The friendships, the people in our life, the family would be like, no, you're a good, great person, you've been doing good, you try your best. And it's they'll be objective about it. So that clarity is required. Recognizing projection is the first step to overcoming it. It requires honesty, discipline, and often outside perspective is the key. An analyst, a teacher, a mentor, a guide. So uh, without this, self study becomes a self reinforcing loop where growth is stalled and confusion deepens. Because if you start believing something about Saturn, that Saturn is bad, trash, this, that, it's not good, I hate it, and you never know that Saturn has a very peculiar, very important function beyond giving, providing with states. It creates compression and depth in the psyche, and if not for Saturn, if not for that thing, one would go to sleep and become totally go into a sushupti avastha, totally go into some sort of sleep state, or even swapna, sort of a dream state of some sort. But it's the disappointments, sort of the pain, that the sansaram dukkham becomes really clear, and one can then be disappointed by life and start turning their head towards the things that are probably actually more important. So, what is spiritual bypassing now? Spiritual bypassing occurs when it's sort of a new trending concept also over the last 5 or 10 years, and because of all the new age spirituality, and this has been there though for the longest time. Probably it's just being conceptualized probably more now, voiced more. So spiritual bypassing occurs when the study of Jyotish, especially of one's own chart, becomes a way of avoiding facing uncomfortable truths rather than embracing them. So instead of using the chart as a tool for honest self inquiry and transformation, the student uses overly positive interpretations to sidestep difficulties, astrological jargon to intellectualize pain without feeling it, idealized identity constructs that deny shadow aspects, false hope that karma or planetary positions excuse responsibility, bec- because responsibility itself is a certain graha. It's part of the psychostructure. It probably requires the fact that one is excusing themselves out of responsibility, being responsible, shows that those grahas or those areas of life are not cultivated properly. So when you cultivate those grahas, build that character, build that strength, then uh, you're basically doing the Jyotish work. So it's all self-reflective, positive. When we work on articulation, we work on Mercury. When we work on some sort of uh, Venusian activity, we are cultivating Venus, satiation, fulfillment, devotion. If you're going to devotional states, so detachment from reality, confusing avoidance with spiritual progress. Another one, distorting to the point of I just want to meditate. And then you see. And just study Jyotish, this, that, and there are actual things that require attention. And if you don't pay attention to those areas, life gets worse. And then meditation and Jyotish wouldn't help. Part of meditation and Jyotish is to make you aware what you need to work on, where to, what requires your attention, what requires the stabilization, what requires order through the force of your own attention. So, this form of bypassing keeps the student in a safe but stagnant place where growth is delayed and true insight is blocked, which is the worst thing, right? You're making all this effort to study, and you're not growing, so you start getting demotivated, and you're not getting that insight for which you're studying in the first place, making all this effort. So overcoming spiritual bypassing requires courage to face the discomfort, which must be guided, gentle, depending on your chart, depending on your psychostructure, what kind of person you are. How to reach that kind of psyche within yourself requires external guidance sometimes also. Humility to accept flaws and willingness to engage in difficult inner work, right? So all of these things have to be done very carefully. Ego structure has to be developed, and perspective has to be developed clearly. Conceptual clarity needs to be there. Reason, the capacity for reason, and um, the sword of reason that is going to slay the serpentine negative voices have to be sort of cultivated very carefully. Psychoanalytic psychotherapeutic sort of work, and this requires mentorship. So self-studying is interesting because on one hand it's important, and fundamentally once you get the notes, you're currently listening to this video, this lecture, and going through, but ultimately you're still self-studying in some sense. You are self-reflective in your own space, but it has to be structured is what I mean, and guided by someone who is not a teacher, but just a little bit of a senior student, someone who is gone a little ahead so they can bring you there, and it has to be logical and reasonable. So Jyotish, when studied properly, does not offer escape. It actually makes it more self-evident. It offers illumination, sometimes harsh, always necessary. Not harsh in the sense of painful, but harsh in the sense of uh, profoundly sort of a wake up sort of situation. So we don't want to spiritually bypass ourselves through this work, which is very common. Jyotishis, the personal equation, the personal birth chart, the reflections are all distorted. So I just want to take a moment. So I've started a study community called the Jyotish Project. Community, sort of just called the Jyotish Project. It is courses, community, and contemplation for those seeking to learn Jyotish. So you can scan this QR code and see if it is the right fit for you. You're most welcome. There are many benefits to joining this. So you can just, I don't want to bore you. You can just pause the video for a second here and just read through what's written, right? So we can just move quickly. I don't want to take too much time. And So the importance of detachment and witnessing. So to study your own chart effectively, you must cultivate a stance of detachment and witnessing. Detachment does not mean disinterest or avoidance. Detachment is actually profoundly available state. It's available to everything. When you're attached to this pen, my attention is fully entangled with this particular object. But when I become detached with this object, I'm available to all kinds of pens, different colors of pens, different tips, different kinds of things related to pencils. Maybe are also become okay with pencils. But if I become really attached to this pen, this particular tip, this particular thing, and I don't explore, I become like, no, this works, this is the only thing that needs to work. It freaks me out to look at any other pen even. Then there's a there's difference. So detachment actually makes one, that's the paradox, more available, because you're more like air. You move and you're available to different kinds of situations. This gives you more presence rather than escape avoidance. At least that's how I interpret it. And tell me if it makes sense to you as well. It does to me for sure. So it means stepping back enough to observe the chart and its reflections in your life without immediate judgment, emotional reactivity, on identification. That requires a gradual process of unfoldment and also guidance again. And part of the community, the Jyotish project community, the course community, study community with the QR code I just shared, is that's the point. There will be study courses, and there is a kind of a mentorship kind of environment, and do you weak like-minded people who also want to explore Jyotish in this particular way that we are discussing. So anyway, so the point is, witnessing means being present with what arises, pleasant or painful, without trying to change or deny it right way, and even reflecting on why this is painful, why this is pleasant to me. Because something painful right now ends up being pleasant in the future, and you realize, oh, all that pain actually trained me to access this kind of life, and all that pleasant things actually made life harder now, right? So pleasant and painful are context based and interpretation based. The same thing, so sort of like acquired taste kind of foods that feel really unpleasant, and you eat it, it's unpleasant, but eventually you develop a taste for it and you start enjoying it, and you don't even find it unpleasant anymore. You're like, oh, it's actually really good, and you forget even that at some point, this the moment it touched your tongue, you sort of freaked out and you never wanted to eat it again. So this stance allows what detachment witnessing kind of stance, see patterns clearly without distortion. So our studies need to be very grounded. It needs to come from philosophical clarity and very basics, like what to study first lecture is very important. That's why you start with grahas, you start with philosophy, you start with discussions and dialogue. And that's the point. Recognize projection and bias as they emerge, create space for genuine insight and growth, avoid getting trapped in emotional reactivity or defense. Approach your child as a teacher rather than a judge. Don't judge, observe. It's not the art of a judgment. It's awareness, it's observance, witnessing life, witnessing nature, seasons, your psychophysical patterns. So, developing detachment takes practice, patience, and often guidance. And Jyotish itself allows us to develop this detachment and become available to more oneself more in different ways and to others in different ways also. And there'll be times when we are not able to do that. There are times when we are able to do that. And Jyotish sort of reveals that also to us. So, it gives us more patience and compassion for others, and it makes us simpler. So it is a foundational skill that prepares you for deeper and more transformative study. So you go into more intermediate, advanced kind of ideas and more complex philosophies, which are, and the complex philosophies become more familiar and simple as you keep doing this sort of detached, non-projective work. So without it, the personal chart easily becomes a source of confusion, suffering, and false comfort. It creates a lot of distortion and pain. There have been instances where some astrologer told someone that you are going to lose your left arm in the next 2 years, or you're never going to have a child. And they had a child eventually. The other person never lost their arm, and they were freaking out. They're living in fear, and they recommended them certain rituals, remedies, gemstones. And I've like, one person was told that you'll actually uh, do some self harm. I don't even want to use the word. Uh, and it's horrible. Like they predicted, like in the next 3 years you're gonna not, like, it's bad. Like you understand what I mean. Like they use a certain term which I don't want to use. It could be a trigger for people. It's just not nice. That's not nice. It's false also, and it's not just false. It's also unethical. It's not grounded in truth. It's just so what is it that, and that's how it is these days. It's all about warnings. There are going to be floods, there are going to be earthquakes, it's going to be war. The- it's not grounded fully. There's been every 3 days there's been some kind of conflict and war over the last thousands of years. Every couple of weeks there's something. It's all these are distortions and complex. It's different. Obviously there's sometimes things are more charged, sometimes things are less charged, and but anyway, you understand what I'm trying to say here, right? So when and how studying your own chart can be valuable, and this is important. We want to study our own chart. I want to study my own chart. We That's how Jyotish becomes pratyaksha shastra. You directly witness it, you directly experience it. So, while studying your own chart can be tricky due to projection and bias, it also offers unique opportunities for deeper learning if approached with the right mindset. And sometimes going into a projection and bias is part of the process, and then undoing that gives a deeper, more profound clarity, a more grounded clarity. So, here's when it can be valuable. So, when you cultivate detachment and witnessing, approaching your chart as a tool for inquiry rather than identity, both are okay. Sometimes identity formation also gets helped a lot through Jyotish, but we want to keep a curiosity sort of mindset. When you balance self study with external feedback, this is the most important part, from teachers, peers, or other charts to check your interpretation. Super important. And the Jyotish Project community, Jyotish Project network, or whatever you want to call it, that study community is built and designed for this. And there's nothing like that, I believe, on, I don't know, on earth, I would say. And when you document your observations over time, tracking patterns, contradictions, and insights patiently, you have to track time, track transits, and you have to be more patient and observant, and you have to document it, sort of collect it, gather data over time through observing the patterns of nature, of your microcosm, of macrocosm, its relationship with each other. So, when you use your chart to test and apply theoretical concepts, deepening understanding through lived experience, right? You want to live life more. As a Jyotishi, you want to experience different people, different charts, different situations, and you want to test that. Oh, this is a Saturn Moon conjunction transit day, and I want to do the thing and see how emotionally fulfilled I get, in what ways, what happens. And this is a full moon day, this is a new moon day, different kinds of tithis, different kind of situations. We want to explore that and test everything. So when your goal is transformation, change of heart, change of understanding, change of reason, intellectual transformation, psychophysical transformation, of all kinds of changes, rather than just information gathering and just being like, oh, that's interesting, using your chart as a mirror for growth, right? That's valuable. That's what we want to do. Remember, your chart is a lab. It's a laboratory, not a playground. So we want to use it like an experimenting, observant, awareness based, self reflective, data oriented laboratory, rather than just haphazardly doing, like playing around and getting complicated, confused, and distorted and freaking out. We don't want to do that. So it invites respectful, careful experimentation and guided and not impulsive or emotionally charged play. With humility, patience, and discipline, self study of your own chart can accelerate insight, but only as a part of a broader and structured study path. So you need a structured study path, which is grounded in the right kinds of sort of understanding philosophy and motivations, intentions, and stuff. And then through patience, humility, and sincere effort, it's really fruitful. The study is really fruitful. So, practical strategies for healthy self study. So, to study your own chart without falling into projection bias or bypassing, consider these practical strategies. Keep a dedicated journal, create a notebook. I wrote a lot, like, I wrote every word uttered by my teachers, by my mentors, while studying. So I was handwriting everything. Now you can type and use different kinds of tools. Write down insights, create a small journal also about dates. The transits are here. This person I'm with right now, I'm traveling with them. This is their birth chart. This is how they are. Or, and then after 3 days of travel, you're like, oh, I was wrong. This is not how they are. They are different than how I assumed. Why is that happening? What in the birth chart? But as you study the technicalities and the actual theoretical grounding has to be very strong. So write down insights, questions, emotional reactions, contradictions as they arise. Review regularly to track growth and blind spots. Set clear intentions before each session. Ask, what do I want to learn? Each lecture, why am I seeking understanding or reassurance? Practice detachment exercises. Observe your chart's themes without judgment. Notice when emotional responses arise and gently bring awareness back to observation. So it's a meditative state, a mindful state where you're like, this may or may not be true. If it is, it's part of the structure of time. So that kind of discussion needs to happen between the community, between the teacher and the students and stuff, so that a groundedness can be there. Compare with other charts, study charts of friends, families, case studies to gain perspective and reduce personal biases. Engage with a community or mentor, super important. Share your observation and invite feedback to deepen understanding and catch blind spots. Allow time, don't rush to conclusions. Let insights emerge gradually through repeated study and reflection. Integrate with broader Jyotish study. Always balance self study with learning foundational principles, Graha dynamics, and traditional ways of teaching. By practicing with discipline and humility, your own chart can become a valuable teacher and not a trap. And that's the worst, developing that spiritual ego or creating a trap using your chart itself, which happens. It's happened to me. In fact, I might be trapped right now with the situation in my own chart, and it has to be unhooked through a mentor. And I do this work. It's super important, super important to not get trapped in a certain situation, a certain idea, and get fixated on that, and then it starts like sort of this thing. And a little bit of reframe, and your moon shifts, your manas shifts, and grahas cultivate a little bit, and a dasha changes, a transit changes, and things start to flow again. So this work is important in that way. It's an active work. It's not this passive observance of this fated destiny, which it is, but it has to be accessed in a certain way. It's quite a complex thing about this whole fate, free will, nurture, nature kind of ideas. And those discussions are also important. And part of that would also be part of the community. So, when and how to bring your own chart into deeper work. So, using your own chart in deeper, transformative, change oriented, self development, self healing work is best approached with care and preparation. So, when to bring your own chart and deeper study after a solid foundation into Jyotish basics and nature of the grahas. At least have that much basic stuff. When you have cultivated detachment and awareness of projection to a little degree also, there's some ego, the strength to handle certain truths in certain ways, good and bad both, which is also that idea that this is good, this is bad, also requires a lot of nuance. Otherwise, it also can distort us. When you have established a reflective practice, journaling, discussions, when you have access to guidance, whether from a teacher, mentor, or trusted peer, when you are prepared to face uncomfortable truths with honesty and courage. And uncomfortable truths can also be profound, helpful, and beautiful, good, positive, kind things. But they're still uncomfortable because one is not used to kindness. Uncomfortable truths does not mean harsh truths. Uncomfortable truths means whether it's harsh or whether it's gentle, it feels uncomfortable to the person to have that identity reformation. How to approach deeper work with your chart. Use your chart as a mirror for psycho spiritual inquiry, not as a predictive tool for self reflective psychoanalytic work. Predictability will naturally arise from that. I'm not against prediction. Prediction is profound, but prediction arises from pattern recognition. Once you recognize the patterns, then things will seem obvious. Like, of course, this is the trajectory that this thing is moving in. But prediction itself is not the focus. The focus is awareness work. Focus on patterns and dynamics rather than fixed outcomes. Allows, then you become qualitative. Your predictions become qualitative, not quantitative. This, you will buy this kind of it'll be vehicular activities of this kind, of this, in this direction. So it's more directional, possibility oriented, and you it has to be nuanced, right, in that way. Anyway, so allow space for ambiguity and complexity, super important and humbling. uh, Integrate insights with therapeutic or meditative practices to support transformation. Maintain a stance of curiosity and compassion towards yourself, which might require some self and analytic work, how to get to that point for some of us. Remember, your chart is a powerful tool, but only as powerful as your readiness to engage with it responsibly, consciously, sincerely, humbly, and in a certain rhythm, certain pattern, certain uh, goodness, gentleness. So, so, so this lecture, as you know, is part of the ongoing how to study Jyotish lectures. Again, you can just pause the video, scan the QR code, see if it's the right fit for you, this community space. And these are all the benefits. And I believe there's nothing like it. If you sign up and try it out for a month, you would probably also see for yourself there's nothing like it. And I'm very much open to feedback as long as it's kind and honest and sincere. And comment below with your own thoughts and reflections about what we've discussed so far in this lecture, uh, and your own Jyotish journey, how it's going, and how you are finding this series, this lecture, and all of the things that we're doing here. And thank you so much. I will see you in the next lecture. If you stuck around for so long, you are super sincere, super patient, and thank you for listening. I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Bye bye.